In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. I'd like to share a couple of significant events that happened during this week. The relevance of them all together will eventually be made slightly clearer. On Friday, and this was preceded by a little bit, but, I'll start with the preface. About a week ago, a friend of mine reached out to me to ask, he's my age, and I'm 47, to ask if I was going to be joining the AARP so that we could get Stones tickets, because the pre-sale for the Rolling Stones was available to members of the AARP. Now, I did learn that a 47-year-old can join the AARP early. It's the American Association of Retired Persons, for those that haven't gotten that far. And I chose not to. I couldn't make that leap. And so I missed the pre-sale via AARP, but I had the code to the next pre-sale and discovered when I got on that the cheapest tickets that were available were about $1,000 a pop, which was out of my range. So on Friday, jumped on the general sale, and both of the shows, with the exception of things that were way out of my pay range, were completely sold out. So I did not get tickets to the Rolling Stones until later Friday, when I went on StubHub and got as far up and as far back as one can possibly be in Giants Stadium. The last time I saw him was the old Giants Stadium 20 years ago. And so we're going before Memorial Day. I paid a fee. I don't buy that many tickets nowadays, but I paid a fee that was the equivalent of 1/3 of my tickets. You can do the math. My fee was $40 per ticket. And I thought that was expensive. I'll come back to that. I have a purpose for starting with that. Yesterday, it was another significant event. We had an Advent Quiet Day here in the church. And for those that don't know what a quiet day is or wondered what we were doing yesterday, essentially you take a day of prayer and some silence with a small group of people to hold the church, hold yourself, hold your loved ones, hold your friends and enemies in prayer with a particular point and kind of reference throughout. And our reference was we read the gospel according to St. Mark from start to finish. And one of the people there said that they had never, and this is not uncommon, had never gotten through a whole gospel. It was a blessing to be able to do it in that environment. I don't know how many of you have tried to read Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John from start to finish. It's not that easy, and it's a good environment to do this, because it takes a couple of hours. And so we read it all the way through, and a quiet day is a wonderful opportunity in a busy world to simply settle in for some prayer. But it also is very useful to have heard the gospel according to Mark from start to finish. You get some new perspectives on it when you do it that way, rather than these little snippets that we read on Sunday. And we get a snippet today which has our friend the fig tree as a bit of a reference point. One of the things that Mark does is he loves to do things in threes. There's 3 parables about seeds in farming. There's 3 times that Jesus predicts his passion. There's 3 times that Peter denies Jesus. There's 3 times that the fig tree appears. There's a lot of different threes, and when you see them, it makes you wonder, what was the full story? And you often kind of are tempted to read them all together. So I'll tell you, the context of the gospel passage today is at the end of St. Mark's Gospel. It's actually Wednesday in Holy Week, the day before the Last Supper on Thursday, 2 days before Good Friday, 4 days before Easter Sunday. So it's right at the end. And the reference to watching and waiting and being ready is that. But the fig tree, and this came up in our quiet day yesterday. If you have listened over the years or read the Gospels over the years, the odds are pretty good that you have been annoyed in some way at the fig tree when you know the Gospel narratives. And I'll tell you why you'll be annoyed at it, because most of us are. The first time the fig tree makes its appearance is on Monday in Holy Week, a couple of chapters before what we just read. And Jesus is walking down the Mount of Olives towards the temple. He sees a fig tree that is perfectly healthy but out of season. He's hungry, there's no fruit on it, and he curses the fig tree and moves along. And he gets to the temple, and the house of prayer has been turned into a house, basically a marketplace, and he flips over tables. You probably know that story too. And then later that day, Monday, they come back, and they see the fig tree, and it's withered up and has died already. And Peter says to Jesus, "How about that? The fig tree that you cursed is dead." And the reader is left wondering, what did the fig tree do? It's out of season. It's not going to be growing fruit until next year. What did it do? That's not very fair. When you read the whole thing in context, though, you get a little bit bigger of a picture. And the third passage about the fig tree shows up today at the end of all this. And it talks about knowing about seasons and being able to understand when things are ripe and all of that. If you read everything together, it becomes more obvious, I think, that the fig tree is an example that things have a time and a season to bear fruit. And it is very odd that the fig tree is cursed. And the reader is left wondering, what's that about? And then you get to the temple. And the temple had a time and a season of prayer, which, if you know the history, has ended. It had turned into a marketplace, and it would eventually get destroyed about 40 years after this, and has never been rebuilt. Its season ended. And the temple didn't do anything wrong, but the people there were not using it in the right way, and that was Jesus' point there. And you think, okay, that still seems kind of unfair. And then we get to people, and that's what the gospel today is actually about. And it's a time and a season for each of us. And if you actually follow through what Jesus says in these different parables that pop up in chapter 13, it's that for Christians, there is no time or season. It's always now. The enemy, that's what one of the parables is about. The thief could come at any point, so you've got to stay up. The master of the house could come at any point. You have to always be on. And so the fig tree is an example of something that wasn't always on and was struck down. And it sounds really unfair. And when we think of our lives, and I'll be honest, I'm not always on. Are you? Is anybody here always on? Nobody is. And I think the concern that Jesus has for those who are his followers is that they need to know that being a Christian and a disciple of Christ and a follower of Jesus means that you have to recognize that God can make an appearance anywhere, anytime, in any unexpected form. And you need to be ready for it. You need to be prepared. Frankly, we always all need to always be on. Back to tickets for a second. When the Episcopal Church makes the news, it's never good. This past week, the National Cathedral, the Cathedral of St. Peter and St. Paul, it turned out that they had been selling tickets for Christmas Eve and other services for a nominal processing fee of $7. And it turned out they'd been doing this for a decade. And they were called out on it. It turned out that everybody agreed that it wasn't a very good idea. You can make an argument that a $7 processing fee for a ticket is perfectly fine. Maybe you should look into the Reformation and some of the history around charging people for church. There's a history there that we don't want to deal with. And so they turned and changed course, which is very good. I don't want to throw them under the bus. The National Cathedral is a wonderful place. If you're in DC, I hope you visit. If you go on Christmas, you'll have to make a reservation and get a reservation card, which is not the same as a ticket, but it's free. We don't charge for worship. We don't charge for the sacraments. We don't charge for baptism or for the Eucharist. Sometimes you have to pay for music or the use of the hall or space things, but we don't charge for people to come in ever and pray or worship or have sacraments, ever. It's part of what the church is. And you may have seen these pink things floating around. This is not a ticket. It looks like a ticket. I picked the pink color so that you would not be able to avoid it. But it's not a ticket. It's a pledge card. And the difference between a pledge card and a ticket is inexpressibly different. A ticket is something that you pay for, that you get out of. I can't wait to go see the Stones. I don't care where my seats are. It's going to be a great experience for me and the 85,000 people that are with me. And if you couldn't get tickets, that's not my problem. I can't wait. This is not a ticket. This is a pledge card. A pledge card is a sign of your support for this church across all seasons. And I'll tell you why that matters and how it links back to the fig tree. The fig tree was no good because it was seasonal. We are not seasonal. When we're away, and all of us go away, whether it's to do something in town or to go on vacation or to go to a foreign country or what have you, the church still is here. People are still coming in to worship and to receive the sacraments. Another event that happened this week, and I have a follow-up that happened just a few moments ago. Last week, you may recall, if you were in church, that I told you that Carla Carroll had started a coat drive, and we had gotten 100 coats, as far as I knew, so far. That is amazing. Carla knew, somehow, that people were cold in the city and that there was a need for coats. And so she came to me and said, "Can we do a coat drive?" And I said, "Sure. Just make sure the coats get taken out, that's all." I have nothing to do with it. I haven't donated coats yet. I hope to. I hope to go into my house and donate some coats. I have no idea how many people in this congregation have donated coats. Some of you probably have. Some of you are thinking about it now. Some of you maybe don't have a coat to donate. All of those are okay. On Wednesday, I got a text from Carla that said we had passed 200 coats. We were at 202. And at coffee hour after the 8 o'clock, a drenched Carla came in from the rain to tell me that we were over 250 and she was moving coats out of the glass doors downstairs. That's pretty good. You should know, though, that those coats do not come from parishioners exclusively. And in fact, I would probably guess that most of them have not come from people at church. I have seen a lot of people dropping coats off. I don't know any of them. I literally don't know any of them. There was a woman who pulled up with her car and was unloading like a dozen coats. I thought, thank you, who are you? Now, why does that happen? Well, in part because Christ Church is open for ministry every day of the year, and we can do things like coat drives, in part because we have a nursery school and some of the parents may have seen the signs for coat drives dropping off their kids. In part because we have lots of AA groups that meet during the week, and they may have seen the signs coming through. In part because we have a dance group called the Pelham Promenaders, great name, and they may have seen the coat drive. This is fantastic. But all of this is to say that there is no such thing as a season in church. We have liturgical seasons. Yes, we move from blue to white to green to purple. But there is no season in terms of God. There is no season in terms of need. There is no season in terms of love. It is all the time. When each of us turn ourselves off, we've had too much, we're downtime. The church keeps going. The church is always going. And that's what this card is about. It's a support that goes throughout the entire year. Your pledge is for a year to make sure when you're here that the church is open and staffed and doing ministry and offering the sacraments to whomever comes in. And when you are off, and when you're just not feeling like it, we all do, the church continues in large part because of pledges. Now, I said about the coat drive that I had nothing to do with it. And maybe some of you are thinking, I had nothing to do with it either. I haven't given a coat. I don't have a coat. But if you support the church, of course you had something to do with it. It's because of you that the church is open. It's because of you that people can do ministry here. So this is our church and our support. And I encourage you to remember that this is not a ticket to an event. It is not a ticket as my favorite, not at all. He's not a theologian, I don't even like the song. But Eddie Money, it's not a ticket to paradise either. It's a pledge card to make sure that across every season of the year, across everybody's life and their ups and downs, across it all, that God can be found in this place by those that are seeking anytime they are seeking, and that ministry can be done anytime. In the name of the Father, and the Son,